So first of all, Carly, can you quickly introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Carly Stein. I graduated from Haas, class of 2020, and I currently work at Microsoft, where I started in our business development rotational program in August of 2020, and it's a one-year program. And so now after finishing the year, I'm M12, which is Microsoft's venture fund, and I work on our strategy and research team. And I live in San Francisco.
Great, thank you, Carly. It's good to know that you are not far away from us. I thought that you were in Seattle, but yeah, nice reconnect with you, and thank you for joining us, Frida.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I was also a class of 2020, same as Carly, and I also live in San Francisco now. So after graduating from Berkeley, I started at Wish as an account manager. So I was kind of working, the accounts that I was working with merchants directly who sell on the platform. And since about last August, I've kind of grown more into a strategic partnerships role, which I also really enjoy. And yeah, on the business development team.
Thank you, Frida. It's good to have you. So I'll start by asking some questions that would be for the common good. And then in the later session of today's event, we would allow audience to ask your questions. So I know we get a quick sense of where you are right now and then what year you graduate. Can you share a little bit of your journey at Cal and why did you choose a career in business development? So, Kali, you want to go first?
Sure. So when I first came to Cal, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to study, but realized the business kind of aligned with a lot of things that I'd enjoyed doing. And so I kind of came to that realization after trying to get different internships and different involvement in different clubs on campus. And so my first internship that I had was at a startup actually, and working in kind of the entrepreneurship space really opened my eyes to Haas and all the different classes that they had available. So I think I took an intro to entrepreneurship class, which really kind of got me interested in the business world. But I realized that our degree at Haas was also very broad and not really specialized in a certain area. So I didn't necessarily feel passionate about finance or marketing or banking. And so I wanted to kind of find a role that allowed me to work cross functionally with a lot of different groups. And so after working at a startup, I kind of wanted to work at a bigger company. So I spent a summer interning at the Department of Treasury doing project management. And as many internships happened to have, I learned that product management was not something that I loved to do, but it was a good experience helping me kind of understand how the government works and how product management works. And then ultimately, I landed a role at Microsoft in the business development rotational program. And had never really heard of BD, didn't know if it was sales, didn't know if it was strategy. It's very broad and something we can go into a bit on what BD actually is. But in terms of at Microsoft, it's strategic partnerships for our different business lines. And so I really enjoyed that because it kind of was the best of working with marketing, working with finance, working with legal, but also getting to kind of use the people skills that I had built in leadership roles in different organizations. So that kind of led me into staying with business development because I could use a lot of different strong and soft skills that I'd learned over time, but didn't necessarily need to have specific consulting or management skills for finance or Excel skills. That it was a lot of soft skills I was able to bring to the table.
Nice, thank you, Kali. What about Frida?
Yeah, so I was actually, I had kind of a similar route as Carly. I was also really interested in entrepreneurship. I did my first internship um, also at more of a startup, also kind of more of a tech company, which I really enjoyed. I'm actually from the Bay, so I've always kind of been around that atmosphere. So I felt really at home in that first internship. And then the next internship that I did was more of kind of one of the big four consulting companies. And I realized really quickly that that's not actually the type of business that I was interested in, that wasn't the reason that personally I was at Haas. So that was a really good, I would suggest if I can, like to, if you kind of have the choice to do very different types of internships, because it's really helpful when you're kind of picking your broader career to know what you like, but also what you don't like and what like maybe you don't want to go into. So that was a really helpful thing for me to figure out. I was also media studies, so I always knew I was kind of interested in both like the analytical and kind of like I said, entrepreneurial side of business, but I also had always been into like kind of what Carla mentioned, more the softer things. I loved writing, media, like visual stuff. So I kind of wanted to find a role that incorporated both parts of my brain in that way. So I also had not really heard of business development. So sometimes it kind of, because the field is so big, it can kind of get lost. So I was scrambling after as I was graduating in a pandemic, trying to figure out like, oh, what do I want to do? And I had always liked e-commerce. I'd always kind of been interested in that. So yeah, it was really kind of stumbling upon this account management, which was something I personally hadn't heard of, was really, really great for me. Just because it really does incorporate like being kind of strategic and analytical, but I also like work with people day to day, you know, who both within my organization and also kind of who are external clients in that way. And that was something that I really, really enjoyed. Yeah, so that's why I chose business development.
Great, thank you. I think you both touched a little bit about the role of BD. It's comprehensive and it also it's less so known, particularly for students. So, Kali, can you start kind of unpack a little bit about how BD is different from sales, maybe project management and other field, and normally who would you work with, and how would success look like in a role like this? And also, if you can kind of introduce, I know that your program is rotational, it's a little bit different, and how the program is set up.
Sure. So I'd first say that, I mean, BD is something, it's a very broad term similar to business. I think at each company, it does vary. So I think if you're looking at different roles in business development, I would definitely look at the terms on the job description, talk to the people at the company, try to discern what type of business development it really is. At many tech companies, I would say strategic business development tends to be partnerships, whereas something called like a business development representative or account manager is more on the sales side potentially. And so BD different from sales in terms of partnerships are generally longer term agreements, kind of doing things that are more strategic for the company versus having them just pay money to use your product. So for example, in the role I was in at Microsoft, I did a partnership with Adobe so that Adobe Acrobat works well on Windows devices and on Microsoft software. And so that's more of a longer term thing where it's an ongoing partnership. The product teams from both companies will work together. And in that role, in order to kind of get the agreement, it's not just, you know, a simple contract that you sign on both parties. There's a lot of discussions and alignment that has to have. So kind of in some ways, they say that BD is kind of like herding cats, but it's like bringing everyone together. So I would work with people on our marketing team who would be the ones, you know, marketing the product and telling others about the partnership. I would work with people on finance who would work out any of the financial details of the deal, you know, whether there's a revenue share involved and we're paying them or they're paying us, or how much it would cost for the deal to occur, what the pricing would be. I would work with people on legal and the actual contract, figuring out the terms of the deal, going through, you know, different stages of the deal life cycle from the beginning to kind of reaching out to a partner to the end of actually signing the deal, which could either take, you know, on shorter deals a month, a few weeks, to longer deals a year or two to do all of the negotiating. So BD does a lot of negotiating as well. And then you also work directly with the product and engineering teams. So especially if there's more of an integration involved or if there's building that needs to happen in terms of the technical requirements, then you'll work a lot with the product manager or the engineering team who's actually going to be doing the development of it. And you're going to, you know, help them align with the goals of both companies so that there's kind of an overall strategy and an overall you know, end goal for the partnership. So I think that those are some main parts of BD. I think parts of BD are definitely a lot of like managing different people, making sure everyone's on track, making sure everyone kind of is aligned on the goals. But then there's also a very strategic side of it too. So we do things called build, buy, or partner, where you'll work with your teams to figure out whether we want to build something internally, whether we want to buy a solution from another company or buy another company itself, or we'll partner with another company, which is typically what most of the deals are in BD. But in terms of what I was actually doing our business development rotational program at Microsoft is relatively small. So we only take around 4 people a year. And that's because there's only about 300 or 400 people in business development at Microsoft as a whole. So it's pretty high level and strategic work. So essentially, at a company of, 70,000, 80,000 people like Microsoft, there's only 300 or 400 working in business development, whereas we have about 30,000 people on our sales team, for example, selling our products globally, into educational schools, into governments, into corporations, you name it, Microsoft is kind of everywhere. So the really high level strategic partnerships are really what BD is focusing on. And, there's BD at all different levels. So BD can be, based on a singular product. So it can be, similar to just getting Adobe Acrobat onto Microsoft, or it can be, a big partnership between Xbox and Discord, making, a global partnership so that they integrate well together. Or it could be, something for, we really want to help the manufacturing industry. So we have different solutions that we'll offer into manufacturing for car manufacturers or agriculture manufacturers. So there's a lot of different types of BD, and it can touch a lot of different industries. So I think that's something that I liked about it a lot, is that I was always working on different projects and in different industries, kind of like consulting in a way, in terms of just consistently learning and doing new projects and being challenged. But you're not traveling as much. You're not kind of just making a deliverable to hand it off. You actually get to see it from start to finish. The work-life balance also tends to be a bit better than consulting companies, tech companies for sure. And then in terms of measuring success, I'd say it's different from there's generally not, like in sales, for example, you're trying to meet a quota. You're trying to, have a certain number of calls or emails per week, have a certain number of reach out to clients. Whereas in BD, like you could be working on a partnership for a very long amount of time, but there's not necessarily as much of how many deals you do, but more of like the value of the work and the value of the partnerships you create. And that was a lot of talking, so I'll hand it over to Frida now.
Well, I will just touch on a few things because I couldn't have explained it better myself. I think that was a really good comprehensive overview of kind of how BD differs from sales and kind of all of the things that it could entail. And it really does look different at every company. So it's obviously going to look really different at a company like Microsoft, which is so big, versus Wish, for example, which is still a little bit smaller. So for us, for example, we actually work really closely with the sales team because they're kind of the ones, bringing in whether it be new partners, new clients, and then what the business development team does is kind of find avenues, almost working directly with the sales team to find avenues of where they can go to even kind of look next for potential merchants or partners. And so another thing that I would say that would have been really helpful for me to know, kind of in school going into the big umbrella of business development, is that sometimes there's certain words and job descriptions that say a little bit more about what the role might be. So and this could differ from company to company, but usually if you're seeing something like account executive versus and like sales development representative, those are probably going to be more salesy roles where you might not necessarily have a quota, but you're probably going to be doing kind of direct outreach. You'll be doing the very first like touch point that a client might have. And then something like, at least for us, something like account management is it's after the account executive gets the lead, then it's, bringing them on and holding their hand and making sure that they have a good experience and kind of strategizing with them on what growth might look like on your platform. So things like that, it's just like, that took me a long time to learn. It's little like differences such as those that actually kind of might help you define a little bit more what you're looking for. How is it different from project management? I think Carly said this really well. It's almost very overlapping. It's very possible that you're kind of working on it on a business development team. And even if your title isn't project manager, specifically, if you're kind of leading the charge in one certain area, then the project management part of it just really means that you're kind of looking over all parts of whatever the project is. So that is kind of this working together with other teams, checking in with engineering, like Carly said, also if it needs like an integration, making sure that's going well. If you need to work with finance, figuring that out. If you need to work with marketing, social, with the sales side. So that's kind of, I would say, probably what project management is. And project management can fall really into any team. And yeah, I actually work with other teams a lot, which is one of my favorite parts of my job. So it's both the external work, but also the internal work is really fun in business development because you do need to work kind of with other teams really closely. And something that I always really enjoyed was being that bridge between like kind of the external and the internal. So you're the first one to hear the feedback of, oh, I wish, it were like this, or I wish you had this functionality, on which in my case, for example, and then kind of hearing that feedback and being able to work with internal teams to say, what if we did this or that, or I got this feedback, that is kind of a really fun part of being in a team that's so that's kind of so entwined with the other teams.
Great, thank you. Kali, I know that you start working with Microsoft from an internship. So can you, I know that you already give us an example about working with Adobe, but can you kind of tell a little bit more about from the very beginning working in this role, how do you feel like you make an impact? Maybe it's tracing from your internship or when you just started as a full-time.
Yeah, so I think because of how Frida described the ability to work both internally and externally, you actually feel I had a lot of autonomy as someone in BD because you're working with a lot of different people across teams, and BD is often looked to be the expert or kind of the source of truth for a deal or a project. So I think coming in at a young age and having not just working with other people and you obviously report to someone, but getting assigned different companies to either watch over that deal or work on a certain project or be assigned a specific part of a deal where you're managing different teams that lead into that. You kind of have a lot of autonomy and a lot of responsibility. Whereas I feel like in other roles that I was considering before selecting the job at Microsoft, I felt like I would have mostly been a data mule or someone, doing kind of the grunt work, which is definitely valuable and you learn a lot from doing that. So not to diss any of those other options in different careers, but I think that in BD, you're kind of at a higher level in terms of thinking and strategy and being able to work cross-functionally, which is something that you don't get in a lot of other roles when you may just be, deep in a spreadsheet or deep in a research project all day long. This is really like you're in the weeds, you're working across different groups. So I really liked that people, even after 2 months of working in a specific thing, the lawyer on our legal team would come to me and say, Carly, like, what are the terms for the contract? And, being 2 months onto the job, I'd say, you're the lawyer, you should be writing the terms of the contract. And they're like, this is a business decision. Like, you should write the terms because they're part of the business side of the contract. So it was definitely a lot of eye-opening experiences, but you learn a lot on the job in BD. So I'd say, well, yes, like our degree from Haas was very valuable. Most of the things I did at work were very much job specific in terms of the processes and the working together with different people, what each group likes. But I think from Berkeley as a whole, what you do get is, working on different clubs and on different teams. I think having the kind of experience working on a team and working in different group projects is really valuable because you just learn how to work with different types of people that have different personalities and different types of ways of managing work. So I think I really liked, at least from being in BD, that you get to kind of work with a lot of different things and are always doing something different versus just doing the same kind of, like in finance, for example, you may be kind of working on the same quarterly reporting each quarter to kind of make sure it all lines up. In BD, it's always different. There's always a different deal. There's always different components. Each team has such different requirements, whether it's marketing or finance or legal. So it just, the day-to-day is very different. And I never get bored because of that.
Nice, good to hear. So Frida, I know it's a e-commerce company and then doing international business, and that success or making an impact may look very different compared with Microsoft as a bigger company. Can you give us an example about your role, and then how do you feel like you're adding value?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, and this is again kind of jumping off what Carly said, but one of the things I also really enjoyed was kind of jumping into the workforce and immediately having this sort of responsibility. And mine wasn't, it wasn't from an internship, and it also wasn't a program. So I wasn't hired with a bunch of other people my age kind of going through the exact same thing, which I know some programs are, and I definitely think there's a lot of good to be said about kind of those starting programs and kind of having a starting class. But for me personally, it wasn't like that. And that was also really good for me in certain ways. And yeah, it was kind of, so I came in, I was kind of the youngest, I was by myself on this new team. And I was also kind of shook at the beginning of, oh wow, they're like really wanting me to just kind of start and do stuff, and they trust me. And at the beginning, you almost feel like an imposter for a second, because you're like, really, can I do this? And so one of the things that for me is working with clients directly. And for me, like I said, in my case, it was specifically merchants who sell on the platform. So these are usually kind of online sellers who sell on other platforms as well, and they have some experience kind of in the world of e-commerce. So it was working with them, building up relationships, and then I think the funnest part is figuring out how, like I said earlier, kind of how can you work on their behalf and on behalf of like the company as a whole of kind of making an impact. So one of the things that I really had fun doing was thinking about like, how can we curate products to get like this set of products in front of the kind of right audience. And so I was working a lot with like our engineering team on curating certain products together based on category, and then working with design to make like a collection tile and make it pretty and feature the products, or a homepage banner, things like that. So almost like merchandising tools. So that was a project that I kind of was involved with from the very beginning. And again, it took work kind of cross-functionally. It took work with merchants directly. And that was really, really fun for me, because it was kind of helping, kind of build a new thing. And then also just seeing success and seeing it on my actual app, things like that. It's really cool to feel like you are kind of empowered to work on things that you feel really make a difference, both kind of for the user experience, and also if you're working in a more like B2B role, as I am, for the client or merchant experience. So that's something that always makes me smile when I feel like I can have an impact in that way.
Thank you for unpacking that for us. So I think I'm going to end this first session a little quick about, I know that Carly, you talk about there are a lot of communications and even negotiation involved in a role in BD, and we can certainly predict what skills it's required to thrive. But can you kind of summarize what skills that it's needed to handle all the challenges and maybe navigating the things that are a little bit challenging?
Yes, I think one that I'll definitely touch on is Frida mentioned relationships. And I think relationships is a very key component of being in business development. You're constantly working with different people, whether it's via email, whether it's over the phone, whether it's in a Zoom meeting or in person. And so I think not only having a personal relationship with them, but also, which is hard virtually, but getting to know them a bit will only help when you're negotiating with them later. So I think being personable, having people skills, being able to communicate well verbally and through written communication or through a deck, that's pretty important as well. I'd say you need to have kind of a strategic mindset in order to be able to, think big picture about all the different components of a deal, but also kind of be able to get closer and to different parts and know, what exactly is happening in each component. Personally, I didn't have as much, financial knowledge needed for the role, but also like we're at a big company, so that could just be because when I needed something done, a deck, I would go to our marketing people. But now I'm definitely doing that more myself for certain things in this role that I'm in now. But yeah, I'd say in terms of skills, being able to work with different people, being agile, being willing to kind of get to the heart of a challenge and ask why, I think is another big thing. A lot of times product teams will come to you and say, can you make a partnership here? And you have to be able to kind of push back and say, well, why do you want that? Or why is that something that we need? Because clearly we're a small team. And so it's not often that you can do everything that, people are coming to you with requests for. So it's kind of being able to balance between requests from different people on different teams and trying to figure out how to prioritize what's more important. So I guess that probably bubbles up into time management or managing people. But yeah, I'd say those are the top skills I can think of.
Thank you, Carly. Frida, do you have anything that you want to add on for this?
Yes. So again, relationship building is super important. Like Carly said, just be open, be yourself. Also, I talked a lot about working with merchants, which is what I was doing as an account manager. Now, like I said, I do more strategic partnerships. So those are more high level, usually with B2B companies that we partner with. They can be e-commerce platforms. They can be kind of ERP companies. And so there I'm more talking to like other companies, partnership teams instead of merchants, which is what I was doing before. So again, there it's like it's finding that perfect ground of being able to kind of build up a personal relationship and also a business relationship. And I think with that comes just being curious, kind of being excited to learn about other teams within your company, being excited to learn about kind of other companies. And then a good thing that Carly mentioned too, I think, was kind of being able to ask why. And with that, I think comes also being able to push back sometimes. So if things have been done a certain way, or, you're working with another team and they say, oh, well, no, or we don't do it that way, then sometimes it's really, if you know that like, you want to get something done, or this is really going to help, it's really good to be able to build out your case, not in a pushing way, but just kind of stand up for what you kind of think is necessary. And again, that was one of the things that it's kind of crazy sometimes if you're just out of college and you feel like, oh no, well, I can, or they're not going to want to hear what I think. But people want to hear what you think. So if you have an idea, then stick with it.
All right, thank you, Frida. So with that, I'm going to move to the second part of my question list, which is mostly regarding recruiting. And we understand that this role is not very structured yet, and then there may not be a lot of opportunities available, or it takes time for students to find out that opportunity. But first of all, can you I think we already talked a lot about the communication and relationship building skills, and what do you think is the essential when imagine you are in a recruiting position, and what do you think your previous experience also helped you pave the way to be in a role like in BD? Yeah, Carly, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So because BD is a very cross-functional role, they hire people from all different industries and different teams and different backgrounds to be in BD. So I think you can really bring any type of skill set and succeed in BD, whether you worked in marketing, or whether you did something in finance, or whether you worked even in customer service. Like there's a lot of different skills that are valuable to bring to the table to BD. I think in terms of recruiting, problem solving is one that's pretty important for BD. Just being able to think of you. I mean, there wasn't case interviews, but there was, kind of asking how you think. They want you to be very curious, be able to kind of break down a problem. Asking why is very important, as I mentioned before. So I think problem solving, also just kind of having a love for learning and wanting to get to the heart of a problem. I think kind of attaches to research. If you have any research experience, that's good too. But a lot of times when you're working with external partners, you'll have to, do some light diligence into the company, figure out, who you're talking with, who the best contact is to reach out to. Also experience on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn all the time, trying to reach out to different people at different companies. So it's a great tool to just not only build up your relationships, but also use it as kind of an outreach and way to contact different people, because basically people who are working in BD are always trying to talk to other people working in BD at different companies to see how they can collaborate. And then like working on a team. So I think people in BD have leadership experience and ability to work on a team. So I think those are both super important. So whether that is from, playing sports or being in a club or an organization, I think leadership experience is something that's very valuable in BD as well.
Great, thank you. Frida, can you further add some your insights to this?
Yeah, of course. I think that something that's really important during recruiting is to come off as yourself. In business development, like we said, like it's about relationship building. So if people are feeling like you're kind of putting on something, and obviously I get it. Like I am so nervous during interviews. It's terrifying. I totally understand. But I think one of the biggest things is it honestly is to like kind of just to be yourself and be how you would be. Ask good questions. I've been doing some interviews now, like interviewing people for roles at Wish. And I think one of the things that I always look for is like, are they curious? Have they thought about actually like kind of taking the time to really think about questions of like how the role would impact the company, or even like how the company's strategy is, or anything like that. And then another thing I would say is kind of mention things on your resume. And I think maybe I'm kind of going into the next question as well, but two things. One is kind of on your resume, let your personality shine through a little bit. So if, for example, like I said, I was really interested in e-commerce. And so I had actually kind of with some friends from home, we kind of started this upcycling website where like you buy old stuff and you like upcycle it essentially so that it doesn't go to waste. And so that was something that I was able to talk about because I was interested in e-commerce and selling things online. And of course, you don't obviously have to have a hobby that relates to every single job you apply to, but just like letting things shine through and letting things go down your resume too. So for example, one of the things for me was that I really liked journalism. And so that was something that I felt was traceable through my resume because I mentioned it in my extracurriculars, because I put it in my bullet points that I'd done some writing in my internship experience and other experiences. So things like that, little parts of your personality, if you are able to kind of show them on a resume so that it doesn't look cookie cutter, that's what I look for. And then the other thing is have used the product. It's very awkward to be in interviews on both sides. One, if they are asking you about the product and you don't know, like you've never used it, you haven't downloaded it, you don't know what exactly it does. Or if I'm interviewing someone and it's clear to me, for example, that they've never used Wish, they've never been on Wish, they don't have the app, then it's like, it's almost a little awkward. It's like, well, why are we talking, So I think those are probably my things. Make your resume yours and actually a reflection of both your accomplishments and of who you are. And also just take the extra time, I promise. Take the extra time to download whatever it is or use the product or know what they do. And then you can have a much better conversation about it.
Great, thank you, Frida. And you also already touched about the resume part. Thank you for that. And I think I'll move on to the next questions regarding networking. Carly, you mentioned you use LinkedIn a lot, and I would suggest our students to use it for just connecting to alum, asking for information or interview as well. But cold emailing people and then connecting to someone who, from scratch sounds a little nerve-wracking. So how do you go about reaching out to people? And I know this would be kind of the mimicking what you would be doing in a BD role, right? Can you share your experience and then give students some advice about reaching out to people?
Yeah, so I'd first say, with LinkedIn, I love what Frida said about being yourself on your resume, but at the same time, LinkedIn does have algorithms that are used when companies are looking to scan through your resume. And so I still would highly recommend, if you're looking at a specific job posting, to tailor your resume with specific keywords in those postings, because honestly, I think some of the roles that I was offered interviews for were because it was like I worked at the Department of Treasury and I got a global treasury interview. I didn't do anything related to treasuries. I was doing project management, but because they saw the word treasury, I think it popped up in their algorithm. So do know that, like, if you're really excited about a job, make sure to tailor the wording for your previous experience to have some of the experience in their posting within what you've already done. So whether that's just tweaking the way it's written. But in terms of actually using LinkedIn to reach out to people, one, I would say, I think that the generations younger than us, even a year or two, have been so much better at using LinkedIn than I was when I was still in college. I barely would ever, message someone, cold call to talk to them or try to learn about their company. But I think since you guys unfortunately had to go through COVID and had to go through a virtual world, you became more open to reaching out to people, which is great. I would say if I get, a lot of random requests from people, and if there's not really a note attached to it, I may ignore it, unless I do work right now in venture capital. So I do, get requests from a lot of startup founders, and I'll respond to those if they're interesting. But if you're trying to meet with someone, like, tell them why. They're much more inclined to respond or to answer or even give you some of their time if you say, like, hey, I'm really impressed by your experience. I'm recruiting right now and would just love to learn about your job. Yeah, some people might be too busy and ignore it, but if I were to get one of those, I'll probably respond if I think that I have something valuable that I can share with you. And also, I would say, try to make the relationship a two-way street. Even if you think you might not be able to help them with something, offer, I can connect you to someone, or I can share you articles in the future if they align with something you're interested in. I think that's always been really helpful to kind of make it feel not just transactional, but kind of build a relationship. And also say thank you. That's a big thing too. Anytime I've, given my time to someone and I never hear from them again, it's always, it happens all the time, but for the people who do send, thank you so much for your time, even just a little LinkedIn message afterwards, it really goes a long way to making an impact and kind of has them keep a lasting impression in my mind of, if I'm looking to hire someone, or if I see something that I think they might like, I'll send it their way. So yeah, send a note at the beginning and send a note saying thank you at the end if they do give you your time.
Thank you.
Oh, but at the same time, don't overdo it. Don't just, contact a whole bunch of people hoping someone will bait. Like, be pretty intentional with who you're reaching out to so that you have intentional interactions with others.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
would echo everything. Sorry. I would echo everything Carly said. And yes, I totally agree with what you said. Use the job description to use keywords from the description in your resume, whether you're applying through LinkedIn or if you're sending it directly through their portal. That was do that, and then also in your things about yourself, just let yourself shine through. But yes, that is very, very important. And it can be annoying because it's like such little tweaks that you're almost like, do I really need to, like, my resume kind of already says the same thing. But yes, it actually does help, and it is really important. In terms of networking, I agree. Attach a note when you're reaching out, and utilize LinkedIn, and utilize things like there's so many groups and channels in LinkedIn, like use the Haas Alumni one. And something else that LinkedIn really does well is it'll tell you, like, this many people from your school work there. So if you're interested in a specific company, this is something that's what's really nice is I would just make lists of, like, companies that are interesting to me because I like their products, or because I've, heard stuff about their culture that I really like. And then you can look those companies up on LinkedIn, and it'll show you who went to Cal, who works there. And as soon as you have that connection, like, I would definitely suggest you write. And I think it only, when you send a request, it only lets you do like 250 characters or something. But even in those characters, you can just say, like, hey, I went to Cal and I'm really interested in a job here and I'd love to chat. And I also would always accept those requests. So use LinkedIn and do reach out.
Yeah, thank you, Frida. And so I think I'm going to end this quickly to allow more time from the audience to ask your own questions. But um, can we do kind of a recall from your days at ACAL, and if you still remember some of the courses that you like, that you think it's helpful in your future career, or some extracurricular activities. I know student works now are like changing really fast, but the things that you have done at Cal that you think you would recommend to current students.
Yeah, I would say one of my favorite classes was contract law with Alan Ross. It was a business law, I think it's called. That really prepared me for BD because you're really digging into contracts, seeing how important each term is. And he's just an awesome professor. He's great at making the class engaged. And if you haven't done your homework, everyone in the class will know. So keep that in mind. But I loved that class. Intro to Entrepreneurship is another great one. Really just helps you understand how a company is started, what goes into it. Even you'll get probably do a project where you have to create one yourself, but really gives you a better macro picture for how companies are formed and how companies work. And then I would say any of the speaker series. Haas has fantastic speakers come in, and I don't think I utilized that enough until maybe senior year, but they bring in CEOs of top companies or people from all across different industries to speak. Use those to learn from their experience. Like all you have to do is sit there and listen. And there's also different like 1 unit classes that were specific speaker series from the Sutarja Dye Center. So that was awesome as well. And then in terms of clubs, I was involved in leadership in my sorority, which is kind of similar to being in leadership in any other organization, but really learning how to work with different types of people and work in a group where people have different interests and each have different functions. I would say getting involved in kind of a higher level in a club is super important because you just learn how an organization functions, what's required of it, and then how to work with people who have different types of interests and habits.
I would say kind of utilize, there's so many classes at Haas and you definitely don't have time to take all of them, but kind of utilize them to, I really wanted to play on my strengths and my weaknesses. So I really challenged myself, I think it was senior year, to take investments. And that was a really hard class for me because I knew I wasn't going to go into investment and most of the people in the class were. So it was a challenge, but it was something that I was like, I'm in Haas and I wanted to get better at this. So kind of my advice would be do things even if you don't necessarily think like, oh, this is the career that I'm going to choose, but explore. And Haas has so many great classes for that. And then I also took some really good marketing classes. Any of the operative marketing classes were really, really great. Like I said, I was also media studies, so I took some really good media theory, things like that even though they're not necessarily like every day I use them in business, they really helped like how I think about certain things or how I approach problems. I also took the Satarja Center speaker series. They are awesome. The speakers are so cool. Go if you can, or I don't know, I bet they're doing them online now, so listen in. Those are great. And then for clubs, like I said, I don't think you need to, if you're in a business club or a business frat or whatever, that's totally great. I'm sure you probably get a lot of experience through that, or even the consulting club. But also just, like I said, do things that show kind of who you are and what you're good at and what you like to do. So I was on the Daily Cal. I was in a leadership role for a long time for a small club called Love Your Melon. They do these beanies, but it was a cause that I cared about. And yeah, just kind of do things in school and outside of school, whether that be in a club or totally on your own time, that you enjoy doing, and then also things that kind of broaden your horizons and kind of, like I said, play on your weaknesses or challenge you in some ways, because I think it's a really good time for growth and to still figure out what you may or may not like.
Great. Well, thank you, Carly and Frida, to unpack the role of BD and also give us a lot of very helpful advice in terms of recruiting. So we have 8 more minutes. I would like to open up for audience to start thinking about your own questions. And before that, I hope that you can help participants, you can help me out in filling out this poll, which only has 3 questions, very easy to answer. That would give us a better sense of how we can better organize events like this. And then students, you can start, think about your questions. You can either put out in the chat or feel free to raise your hands just like you do in a class. And then, or if you feel comfortable, you can turn on your microphone to start asking questions. All right, so we have the first student, who is Jerry. Jerry, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Carly. I just have a question for you regarding Microsoft's business development. The work you did, as you mentioned in your talk, um, from my understanding, it sounds connected to acquisition and merger cases in some cases. So, would you want to maybe talk a little bit more about like your role in maybe some of the major merger cases or acquisition cases, especially the recent one with Blizzard? Do you have? I'm sure you have heard of that. Could you maybe enlighten us about your experience in that process?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had absolutely nothing to do with the deal, but yes, I did know we spent $69 billion buying a Activision Blizzard this week. I would say in BD, some groups do work on acquisitions for sure. Higher level ones like this one would be done out of corporate development, which is a different function that a lot of companies have. So they focus more on the M&A side, doing everything from acquiring or finding companies to target, figuring out, what makes most sense, whether we buy them and just integrate them fully, or whether we keep them kind of like LinkedIn, which we own, but they kind of function completely separately and recruit separately. So there's lots of different types of acquisitions, but I would say primarily BD does partnerships and occasionally some acquisitions, but that's like a shorter percentage of the time because it's not like we're doing acquisitions like every day. But if there are like certain particular acquisitions along the lines of like a specific product or a smaller deal where we want to hire the team for talent or for their product first, let's say, then we could do them. But I personally haven't worked on any, and I think it's a much smaller percent of the BD work because it usually gets done by corp dev.
Awesome. Thank you for your insights. Just a quick follow-up question. You talked about some of the skills required in business development. I'm just curious, like, are there any sort of like so-called hard skill sets that you need? For example, any financial background or any like skills that you would learn in some of the HAS courses that you actually use in your daily, job?
I'd say it depends on the deal and on the project. I think like if there are definitely deals that have much bigger finance components in them, I just happen not to work on those. But definitely, if it's a deal where a lot of money is exchanging between both companies, or if there's a lot of revenue involved, having a financial background, or even, I mean, you have to take finance, but I wish I had more of a finance background at times, even though I'm not using it all the time. Um, but I would say in terms of hard skills, a lot of it is learn on the job. I think having, PowerPoint and Excel, I could have been better at, even though I have, entry level skills. I think it's just something that over time you get more practice with it. And, even in group projects in Haas, I often was, there was always someone who was in the consulting club who was like, I'll do the deck, or someone who was in, the investments group who was like, I'll do the model, which is great at the time, but I wish I had paid more attention and learned how to do it myself going forward.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Next one, Cameron.
Yeah, thank you again both for this. This has been fantastic. And thank you, Karen, for kind of putting this together. I've known like kind of about business development, but this kind of really opened my eyes. I really resonated kind of with what you guys were talking about, how experiences, whether clubs or internships, really kind of guided you towards business development in the end. And I was going to ask about classes, but that got answered. So I guess my next question is actually feel free to, you said that you also majored in media studies. And my question is, how was that double major? And was that something that you wouldn't have changed? Did you enjoy that? And how does that really play into your career now?
Yeah, I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I absolutely loved majoring in media studies. It was so much fun. And I think it was kind of like I said, it was really playing on so really I just the reason that I did it is actually I in high school was like I said, I was really involved in journalism, but my publication that I was involved in, we kind of built from the ground up, and we were at this point one time where so it was funded by advertising, and we were kind of running low on money. And so I always was like, oh, I love to write, I love to design pages, all these things. But then all of a sudden, and I was editor at the time, and my teacher said, well, you guys have to fund it. Like, go out in the world and go get ads and keep your business alive, essentially. And I mean, I was like, what, 16, 17 at the time. And we did, and it like really grew. And then we had to eventually like cap enrollment, and it was really cool to kind of be a part of that. But what I realized, I was like, oh, I kind of like fighting for a business. Like, this was really fun for me, and I like building things from the ground up. So that's why originally I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna like look into Haas as well. And I think in any not any role, but especially in business development, because it is so versatile, if you're able to use your left and right brain, I think that's going to give you a really good edge. So no, I would not change majoring in media studies, and I wouldn't change majoring in Haas either. I loved both a lot, and there were a lot of classes also that overlapped in a really, really nice and interesting way. And I use both on my job. So I do a lot of like revenue reporting, which is a lot more of the skills that I learned in Haas. And then I do a lot of creative work, creative brainstorming, that kind of thing, which is something that I really always worked with in media studies. So if you have another major, I think that, or a minor or whatever, another passion, it will only help you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm kind of on that same path, so it's been very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. Keep going.
Thank you.
Great. And then Caitlin?
Hi, so I have two questions. I think I'll start off with like the shorter one, which I think I heard someone mention that the hours for BD are less than working in like consulting or in a tech firm. So I was wondering, on average, how many hours do you work a week?
I don't think I count. I feel like it's normally like it depends on the week. Like the work really ebbs and flows. So I would say there's some weeks where I'm definitely working a lot, and other weeks where I have a lot more free time. And I think also not being in the office, you're not commuting, so you're probably saving time there in some ways, but also working nonstop around the clock. But I think I'd say my normal hours are probably like 8:30 to 5, 8:30 to 5:30. But on weeks where I'm not that busy, I'll go for a run during the middle of the day, or go do an errand, or walk in the middle of the day. I usually never have to work weekends, like maybe if there's a big deliverable, and I generally don't have to work past 6 ever. You can compare that to others how you'd like, but I think that work-life balance is definitely valued, at least where I work.
Yeah, I actually work a lot with people in Europe. So I do a lot of like kind of international business development too, which is really cool. So my hours are a little earlier. I usually start by 8. And then like Carly said, it can sometimes I'll end at 5, and then sometimes I don't end at 5, and it's a little longer. It really kind of depends on the week. But what is nice is, for example, I've always been more of a night owl. Like I work really, really, really well when it's dark outside for some reason. So what's nice is that you can kind of, with this remote work, and I mean, you guys, I'm sure know, you can really kind of design how you work well. So yeah, if you want to go for a run, if you don't have a meeting, then you can do that and then work later, or you can work earlier. But yeah, they vary, and it's nothing super crazy.
Yeah, I think, and also too, I don't have to like report my time. Like I don't have to log my hours or send them in. A lot of consulting companies require you to have billable hours. So you have to log your hours so that the company knows that they're paying for the amount of time that you're working. So when you're salaried and not working for a client specifically, you don't have to do that. So it's definitely flexible.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think my second question was, I wanted to ask, how involved are you in identifying like partnership opportunities? Because it sounds like there's so much managing involved. So I was wondering, and research as well. So I was wondering how active your role is in identifying these like potential partnerships.
I can start. So mine is, so my newer role, which is as a strategic partnership manager, I definitely do more of that. It's really fun if you, because it gives, like you said, that research and kind of a little bit more of, oh, wait, what could be another really good partnership? And it's not just another company, but almost sometimes it can be like, what type of company? What is another type of partnership that would be interesting for us to think about? So things like that are really fun. And then it goes a little bit more into this almost salesy for me sometimes, where I'll actually do the initial outreach and just say, hey, you know, I'm Rita from Wish, I'm on the partnership team and love to chat sometime about opportunities to work together. So that's also really fun. But yeah, it's kind of however much you want to do, or however much your role entails.
Yeah, I'd say it depends on the project. For me, there would be times where they would assign me a certain deal that was already in motion or that we had an existing partnership with, and they'd say we want to do something else with them. Or, you know, they'd say we have this partnership program where we want to get as many companies onboarded as we can. So then I would go and do outreach and like identify different companies to work with who would be strategic partners. So I think I should have mentioned this earlier, but kind of doing market landscape work is something that I do a lot, kind of analyzing who are the key players, who would, you know, who you'd want to work with, who has the biggest market share. So market analysis is something I do a lot of as well. But I think, yeah, I think it's both. It's definitely sometimes they're given to you and sometimes you have to do outreach.
All right, that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so we want to honor the time that we already past 5. Ritika, would you like to quickly ask you a question?
Sure. Sorry, I'll just make it really quick. Thank you so much for your time. I just had a quick question, like about sometimes I feel like business is really open-ended. And I feel like I'm having a little trouble in finding skills to specialize in for certain roles that I'm looking for. And I was just wondering if you have any recommendations or in your experience with your roles in the past, has anything been particularly useful for you or maybe that you had wished you picked up on earlier in college?
I mean, I feel like BD is very cross-functional and very non-hard skill specific for a reason. So I think that was one of the things that really attracted me to it, was that they weren't looking for any specific requirements. I didn't have to do any type of technical test or a case in the interview. So I think that is honestly a good thing. I think you can always be curious and learn about new things. So I think definitely learning about different industries, if you're looking to go into a certain industry, is important. There's so many online courses that you can take these days to help you kind of expand your knowledge. So even just like taking, I took CS10, which was like intro to computer science. And that was one of the best classes I took in college because I really it was one of the most challenging because it made my brain think in completely new ways. But having that little baseline understanding of how coding works and how, you know, just how coding works essentially allows me to understand tech business models a lot more than I would have been able to before. So really whatever you're passionate about, at least from a BD perspective. Clearly, like Excel is such a fantastic tool. I wish I could spend 100 more hours learning how it works better, but it really just depends on what you're interested in. Sorry, I don't know if that was helpful.
Oh, that was helpful. Thank you.
I would agree. I would definitely say you're looking in the right, if you feel like you are kind of almost like a generalist, which I really felt that way too, where I was like, I'm not like super good at one thing. Then I think you're looking in the right place. I think business development will definitely, because it is so broad, you will definitely find something that's up your alley. And something you could do also is, you know, pick out a few job listings of jobs that really sound interesting to you and see if there's any specific skills that they need, and then see from there if there's anything that you want to develop. And then, like Carly said, I think knowing Excel is literally never in any job going to hurt you. It's only ever going to help you, even if you don't need to use it. Like, knowing it will not hurt you. So pay attention. UGBA 104, I think it was. That was a really hard class, but it's really good. And then I also took some coding classes, which were really hard. And I took the web design decal, which I loved. It was so cool. But it was kind of coding in a design way, which was really exciting for me to learn, and kind of a new way to think. So yeah, kind of like I said before, explore different things at Cal. You don't just have to do one path. you can take the time to take classes in different areas and find out what you like. And through that, you'll kind of pick up even just snippets of skills. And then the other thing is it's okay to not be a professional at one thing yet. That's totally fine. And I definitely think you'll find a role no matter.
Got it. Thank you so much.